Joining me on the phone now to go a little further into this big win for the President-elect of France is CBS News correspondent Elaine Cobbe. Elaine, so clearly this was a huge win for the President-elect. He takes office on May 14th. What do we expect his first order of business to be going forward?
His first order of business, Vlad, will be nominating a prime minister, expected to do that as early as Monday, and forming a government that will show that he is able to unite the country, that he is able to live up to his promises of bringing in both left and right, and that he can present to the people in June for legislative elections and say, look, I've got a working government, and he knows that the Conservative Party, Les Républicains, that put forward François Fillon, the former prime minister, as its candidate in the first round, that party is hoping to be the biggest bloc in Parliament, and that would make it a very effective opposition to whatever he can put together, which may end up being a coalition.
Elaine, it also is sort of interesting. There were many people that, a lot of pundits and pollsters predicting sort of a wave of populist candidates being elected across Europe. But yet, with this election of Emmanuel Macron as president of France, we've seen so far this is the 6th straight European election, if you count both rounds of voting in France, where the nationalist candidate underperformed the polls. Macron, he had a huge win, so that means the polls underestimated him by almost 7 points, which is a bigger error than Brexit and a much bigger one than President Trump.
Indeed, and I think it's also showing that people across Europe are looking at the wave of populism, of ultranationalism, and thinking, maybe this isn't so good. Brexit really was a shock to a lot of people, and saying you want to do something is quite different to looking at the reality of it, what it means now that the UK is actually leaving Europe. And there's a lot of concern. So Europe breathed a sigh of relief, as well as France last night, when Macron, pro-European, pro-business, was elected, and the euro bounced immediately. And it's very important that France stayed in for the stability of the European Union, because the UK wasn't in Schengen, not in the euro. Much easier to let it go than France would have been. That would have changed the face of the European Union completely.
Oh, absolutely. So let's talk about the next couple of weeks. In fact, next month, France has parliamentary elections. Emmanuel Macron has to build a government, as you point out. He needs to bring on a prime minister. What can we expect to see in the parliamentary elections? Could the National Front, and we haven't talked a lot about Marine Le Pen, but you might want to sort of address this as well, that she's thinking about rebranding the National Front completely, and some have suggested she might even get rid of the name. But could we see the National Front gain more seats in the Parliament? What kind of a struggle will it be for Emmanuel Macron to get a majority in Parliament?
Well, Marine Le Pen said last night she recognizes that the party needs to transform, and she wants to look at it again and change how it is, and the vice president suggesting that, yes, indeed, it would change the name. But let's not forget, she did get 34% of the vote almost. That is the best score yet for the National Front in its history. In 2000, it has more than doubled it since 2002. It's huge. And this is something she will want to build on for the legislative elections. They already did very well in the last regional and municipal elections, so she'll be hoping to not just actually get a few seats this time, but to block Macron and whoever he feels.
All right, and finally, Elaine, Macron's campaign was hacked just a day before the election on Sunday. It doesn't appear to have had a big negative impact, but what's the latest on the investigation there?
Well, both the Electoral Commission and the country's cyber investigators are looking into this. Of course, there was the suspicion fell on the Russians, who were also briefly involved in hacking in the U.S. election campaign. Now, it's early days, but several experts have pointed to some little things about how the onward movement reacted so rapidly, and there have been some suggestions that perhaps they were tipped off earlier and deliberately threw in some fake documents just to confuse the hackers. It's not very difficult to confuse hackers if you fear you're going to be hit, and let's face it, they all fear that at the moment. So all yet to be worked out what exactly was going on, but as you say, it did not seem to have an effect. However, it is a reminder that the hacking is a very real threat in modern-day society, and with the legislative elections coming up, officials here and cyber experts are already saying we really need to be much more vigilant.
Yeah, and Elaine, in addition to the hacking threat, France clearly is still facing issues with regards to immigration. It is still facing issues with regard to terror threats, which have had a devastating impact on French people over the past couple of years. So there's a lot of things that I think that it has been reported that people in France are still worried about. And yet today, May 7th, this is also a historic day for France. It is the day that Germany surrendered unconditionally to the Allies at ransom. We saw Emmanuel Macron earlier this morning in Paris with President Francois Hollande laying a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. As we look at these pictures of people waving the tricolor flag, what is the mood today in Paris, in France?
The mood is still one of relief, it has to be said. There was so much relief and joy last night. Car horns were honking, and Macron very cleverly had his people hand out free tricolors at the Louvre last night for his rally. So everyone was waving the national flag as he is talking about uniting this country, which he recognized was divided. And that is something that, played to people who might have been more listening to Marine Le Pen's talk of how she wanted to make France great again. So that is an important one. But one of the big issues he will face is the ongoing threat of terrorism. The country's still in a state of national emergency. He's never been an elected official. He was only briefly a cabinet minister for the economy. He has no experience in security and terrorism, and that is going to be a tough one for him. He will be judged harshly because it's such a big issue, and anything that might happen could easily be thrown back in his face as being because of his inexperience. So it is a huge issue for him.
All right, Elaine Cobbe on the phone with us from Paris. Thank you, Elaine.
You're welcome.